My wife demanded I apologize to her male best friend after I caught them flirting in 3 a.m. text messages. "You're being paranoid and jealous," she said. "Call him right now and say sorry." I nodded and said, "You're right." I picked up her phone and dialed his number on speaker. Before I could say a word, he answered, "Hey beautiful, is the dumbass asleep yet? Let's sneak out tonight again." The silence was deafening. I handed her the phone and said, "Here's your apology call." That night, I packed her bags while she begged and sobbed, kicked her out, then changed the locks. Now, you know what they say about trust, right? It takes years to build and seconds to destroy. Well, let me tell you about the night my world flipped upside down faster than a pancake on Sunday morning. It was 3 a.m. when I stumbled to the bathroom, half asleep, when I noticed the blue glow coming from Rose's phone on the nightstand. Now, I'm not usually the Snoopy type, honestly, who has time for that drama. But something about the constant buzzing made my gut twist like a pretzel. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but when your wife's phone is lighting up like a Christmas tree at 3 in the morning, you don't just roll over and count sheep. The messages were from Felix, her so-called best friend since college. You know, the guy who always seemed to find excuses to text her during our date nights? Yeah, that Felix. The same one who'd show up unannounced with coffee just because and somehow always knew her schedule better than I did. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow night," kissing face emoji. "Henry's so clueless, isn't he? You looked incredible in that dress today." Couldn't stop thinking about it. My blood turned to ice water. Each message was like a punch to the gut, and trust me, I've had my share of those from my boxing days. But this hurt worse than any physical blow ever could. When Rose woke up the next morning, stretching like she didn't have a care in the world, I was sitting in our kitchen chair, her phone in my hands. The evidence was right there, glowing like a neon sign in Vegas. "Morning, honey," she chirped, reaching for her coffee mug. "You're up early." "We need to talk," I said, sliding the phone across the table. Her face went through more color changes than a mood ring. First pale, then red, then back to pale again. But instead of the confession I expected, instead of the tears and apologies, you know what she did? She went on the attack. "You went through my phone?" Her voice pitched higher than a dog whistle. "Henry, how could you violate my privacy like that?" Violate her privacy? I'm staring at evidence that my wife's been having some kind of emotional affair, and she's worried about privacy? Sometimes I wonder if people take classes on how to flip scripts this dramatically. "Rose, these messages are completely innocent," she snapped, snatching the phone back. "Felix is my friend. My best friend. You're being paranoid and jealous, just like always." Just like always? That stung because it wasn't true. I'd never been the jealous type. Heck, I'd been the one encouraging her to maintain her friendships, even when Felix started getting a little too comfortable around our house. "Innocent?" I repeated, my voice probably sounding as hollow as I felt. "Rose, he's calling you beautiful at midnight and talking about me being clueless." "You're reading too much into it," she said, but her hands were shaking as she poured her coffee. "Felix is just. He's always been flirty. It's how he talks to everyone." "Right. Because every guy tells all his friends they can't stop thinking about their dresses. Makes perfect sense. But here's where it gets really good, and by good, I mean absolutely insane." Rose didn't just defend the messages. She doubled down in a way that would make professional poker players jealous. "You know what you need to do?" she said, crossing her arms and giving me that look, the one that used to make me feel guilty for forgetting to take out the trash. "You need to apologize to Felix." I blinked. Once. Twice. 3 times. "I'm sorry, what?" "You need to call him right now and apologize for being suspicious and paranoid. He's been nothing but a good friend to both of us, and you're treating him like some kind of criminal." Have you ever had one of those moments where reality feels like it's tilting sideways? Where you're not sure if you're in some bizarre dream or if the world has actually lost its mind? That was me, sitting in my kitchen, being told to apologize to the guy who was quite obviously trying to steal my wife. "Rose, I'm not apologizing for..." "Yes, you are." Her voice had that edge to it, the one that meant she'd already decided how this conversation was going to end. "Call him right now and say sorry. Prove to me that you trust our friendship." The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. But you know what? Sometimes the best way to handle crazy is to lean right into it. Sometimes you have to let people dig their own graves. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 5 years, married for 3, the person I'd trusted with every secret and dream, and I nodded. "You're right," I said, reaching for her phone. "I am being paranoid." Relief flooded her face like water through a broken dam. Thank you, honey. I knew you'd come around. I dialed Felix's number and put it on speaker. Rose settled back in her chair with a satisfied smile, probably already planning how she'd tell Felix about her jealous, paranoid husband and how she'd put me in my place. The phone rang once. Twice. Hey beautiful, Felix's voice filled our kitchen like poison gas. Is the dumbass asleep yet? Let's sneak out tonight again like we did last weekend. I've been thinking about you all morning. The silence that followed was the kind you could cut with a knife and serve at dinner. Rose's coffee mug slipped from her fingers and shattered on the kitchen floor, brown liquid spreading like her lies finally coming to light. You could have heard a pin drop in that kitchen. Actually, you could have heard a feather drop. The only sound was Felix's voice, still going. Rose? You there, babe? Your husband didn't catch on, did he? Guy's so trusting it's almost sad. I looked at my wife. Really looked at her. The woman I'd been ready to apologize to was sitting there with her mouth hanging open like a fish, all the color drained from her face. Here's your apology call, I said, sliding the phone back to her across the table. Felix was still talking, oblivious to the bomb he'd just dropped on his own head. Rose? Hello? Did you but dial me? Anyway, wear that red dress tonight, you know, the one that drives me crazy. Can't wait to get my hands on. Rose fumbled for the phone and ended the call, but the damage was done. The words were hanging in the air like smoke from a fire that had already burned the house down. Henry, I can explain, can you? I stood up, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Can you explain sneaking out last weekend? Can you explain again like we did? Can you explain why your best friend thinks I'm a dumbass and calls you beautiful? She started crying then. Real tears, the kind that might have worked on me a week ago, a day ago, even an hour ago. But funny how learning your wife's been cheating changes your perspective on tears. It's not what you think, she sobbed. We haven't. It's just emotional. We just talk. Just talk? Right. Because that's what innocent people do, sneak out at night to just talk while calling their friend's husband a dumbass. Where did you go last weekend when you said you were at your sister's? More tears. Henry, please. Where, Rose? We went for coffee. And then we walked around downtown. We talked about our problems, about how you and I have been distant lately. Distant? We'd been distant because she'd been having an emotional affair with Felix, but sure, let's blame me for not being attentive enough while she was getting her emotional needs met by another man. But here's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't just hurt, it changes you. In that moment, standing in my kitchen surrounded by broken ceramic and broken promises, something shifted inside me. The hurt was there, sure, but underneath it was something else. Something cold and calculating. You're right, I said again. We have been distant. Hope flickered in her eyes. We can fix this, Henry. We can go to counseling. I'll stop talking to Felix if that's what you want. If that's what I want? Like she was doing me some huge favor by cutting off her affair partner. But I just nodded and pulled her into a hug. She melted against me, probably thinking she'd dodged the biggest bullet of her life. I love you, she whispered into my chest. I'm so sorry. It didn't mean anything. It's okay, I whispered back. We'll figure this out. And we would. Just not the way she thought. See, Rose had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I was still the same trusting, naive guy who'd married her. The same guy who'd never questioned her late nights or mysterious phone calls. But betrayal has a funny way of opening your eyes to things you've been blind to. Like how she'd been working late a lot more often lately. Or how she'd suddenly become interested in yoga classes that seemed to happen at the strangest times. Or how she'd started caring a lot more about her appearance, buying new clothes and spending extra time on her makeup for casual errands. The signs had all been there. I'd just been too stupid, or too trusting, to see them. But now I was paying attention. That night, Rose made my favorite dinner and we watched a movie together on the couch, her head on my shoulder like old times. To anyone watching, we looked like a couple working through their problems. And in a way, we were. Just not together. While she slept beside me, I started planning. First, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. How long had this been going on? How far had it gone? What did Rose really want, to fix our marriage, or to have her cake and eat it too? I'll admit, the next few days were some of the hardest of my life. Pretending everything was fine while my wife kissed me goodbye each morning, knowing she might be texting another man before she even got to work. But I needed information, and rushing in angry would only give her time to cover her tracks better. Ever tried acting normal when your world's falling apart? It's like trying to smile while someone's pulling your teeth out with pliers. But I managed it, because I had a plan forming. A beautiful, terrible plan. 3 days later, Rose came home from work with a guilty expression that she probably thought looked casual. "Hey honey," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I need to run some errands tonight. Might be late." "Errands? Right. No problem," I said, kissing her cheek. "I've got some work to catch up on anyway." She practically skipped out the door an hour later, and I waited exactly 10 minutes before following her. Turns out, Rose's errands involved meeting Felix at a cozy little restaurant downtown. The same restaurant where we'd had our first anniversary dinner. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. I sat in my car across the street and watched them through the window. Watched her laugh at his jokes. Watched him reach across the table to touch her hand. Watched her not pull away. Then I went home and did some research. Ever notice how people having affairs think they're so much smarter than everyone else? Like they've invented cheating and nobody else has ever thought to check phone records or credit card statements. Rose had been sloppy, probably because she thought I was too trusting to ever look. Our joint credit card told quite a story. Dinners I'd never been to. A hotel room last weekend when she'd supposedly been at her sister's. Coffee shops I'd never heard of, multiple times over the past 2 months. But the phone records? Those were the real goldmine. Hundreds of texts to Felix. Hours of phone calls, often late at night or early in the morning. Times when she'd been in the bathroom doing her skincare routine or outside getting some fresh air. The picture was crystal clear. My wife had been having a full-blown affair for at least 2 months, probably longer. And she'd been lying to my face every single day. So what do you do when you discover your spouse has been betraying you in the most fundamental way possible? Do you confront them? Do you scream and throw things? Do you beg them to choose you? None of that felt right. None of that felt like justice. No, I wanted something else. Something that would make Rose understand exactly what her choices had cost her. The plan I came up with was beautiful in its simplicity. Rose wanted to have her cake and eat it too? Fine. I'd let her think she could. Right up until the moment I served her the consequences. First, I quietly started separating our finances. Rose had always been happy to let me handle the money stuff, so she didn't notice when I opened a new bank account and started moving our joint funds. Just temporary, of course. Just until I figured out how to divide everything fairly. I also made some calls. To a lawyer, to get advice on divorce proceedings. To a real estate agent, to get our house appraised. To an accountant, to understand the tax implications of splitting our assets. But mostly, I waited. And watched. And let Rose dig herself deeper into her hole. Because here's the thing about cheaters, they always get sloppy eventually. They start taking bigger risks, telling bigger lies, getting more confident that they won't get caught. Rose was no exception. A week after her errands night, she came home glowing like she'd won the lottery. "I've been thinking," she said over dinner. "Maybe we should take a little break from each other. Just a few weeks, to figure out what we really want." "A break? How convenient." "Really?" I said, spearing a piece of chicken. "What brought this on? I just think we've been in a rut lately. Maybe some space would help us appreciate each other more." The lies came so easily to her. It was almost artistic. "Where would you stay?" I asked. "Oh, I could crash at Belle's place. You know how she's always saying I should visit more." Belle. Her sister. The same sister who'd apparently been covering for Rose's hotel adventures. The family was really pulling together for this one. "That sounds reasonable," I said. "When were you thinking?" "Maybe this weekend? Just for a couple weeks." "This weekend?" When Felix had probably already booked another hotel room. "Sure," I said. "If that's what you think is best." Rose looked so relieved I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. That Friday, I helped her pack a suitcase. Watched her carefully select her prettiest clothes, her best lingerie. Stuff she hadn't worn for me in months. "I love you," she said, kissing me goodbye at the door. "This is going to be good for us." "I love you too," I replied. And the crazy thing was, I meant it. Even after everything, part of me still loved the woman I'd married. I just didn't love the woman she'd become. Rose left with her suitcase and her lies, probably thinking she'd won the game. But the game was just beginning. See, Rose had made another crucial error. She'd assumed I'd just sit at home like a good little husband, waiting for her to decide whether she wanted to come back to me or run off with Felix. Instead, I spent that weekend doing something much more productive. I gathered evidence. Professional investigators are expensive, but you know what's even more expensive? Divorce proceedings where your cheating spouse tries to take half of everything while claiming they're the victim. The investigator I hired was worth every penny. Within 48 hours, I had photos of Rose and Felix checking into the same hotel they'd used before. Pictures of them holding hands downtown. A nice little portfolio of evidence that would make any divorce attorney smile. But I wasn't done. Oh no, not even close. While Rose was off playing house with Felix, I was having some very interesting conversations with lawyers. Turns out, adultery might not affect property division much anymore, but it sure makes everything else a lot cleaner. I also had a chat with Belle. Henry? Rose's sister sounded surprised when I called Sunday evening. Is everything okay? Rose said you two were taking a break. That's actually why I'm calling, I said. I wanted to make sure she got to your place okay. You know how I worry. Long pause. My place? Yeah, she said she was staying with you for a couple weeks while we figure things out. Another pause, longer this time. Henry, Rose isn't here. She called Friday and asked me to cover for her if you called, but she didn't say where she was actually going. Bingo. Even Rose's own sister was getting tired of the lies. I see, I said. Belle, can I ask you something? How long has this been going on? How long has what been going on? Come on. The lies, the cover stories. How long have you been helping Rose cheat on me? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, Henry, I'm so sorry. I told her this was a mistake. I told her she was going to lose the best thing that ever happened to her. How long? 3 months, maybe 4. She swore to me it was just emotional, that she was confused about her feelings. I never thought. I hoped she'd come to her senses. 3 or 4 months. So even longer than I'd thought. Thank you for being honest, I said. Henry, what are you going to do? I'm going to give Rose exactly what she wants, I said. Freedom. By the time Rose came home Sunday night, glowing and relaxed from her weekend of soul searching, I had everything ready. How was Belle's? I asked, not looking up from my laptop. Good, she said, probably not even remembering that she'd told me that's where she was going. Really good. I think the space helped. I'm glad, I said. Actually, I've been doing some thinking too. Yeah? She sat down beside me on the couch, closer than she'd sat in weeks. Probably feeling guilty about her weekend activities. I think you were right about needing space, I said. In fact, I think we need more space than just a few weeks. Her face went very still. What do you mean? I think we should separate. Officially. Maybe start thinking about what we'd want in a divorce. Divorce? The word came out like I'd slapped her. Henry, I thought we were just taking a break to work on things. Were we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've already moved on. That's not true, she said, but her voice was shaking. I love you. I want to fix this. Do you? Because I hired a private investigator, Rose. I know about the hotel. I know about Felix. I know about all of it. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Henry, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for months. How you've been sleeping with another man while telling me you love me. How you convinced your own sister to help you cheat. She started crying then, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. I was confused and scared about us, and Felix was just there, and... Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I don't want to hear it. But we can fix this, she pleaded. I'll never see him again. I'll do whatever you want. Counseling, therapy, anything. Rose, you made your choice. You chose him over me every single day for months. You chose to lie to me, to sneak around behind my back, to make me feel crazy for being suspicious. You chose to ask me to apologize to the man you were cheating on me with. It was just a mistake, she whispered. No, I said, standing up. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. What you did was a series of deliberate choices to betray everything we built together. I walked to the closet and pulled out the suitcases I'd packed for her while she was gone. I want you out, I said. Tonight. Henry, please. You wanted freedom, Rose. You wanted to explore your feelings with Felix without the inconvenience of being married. Congratulations. You got it. But I don't want that anymore, she sobbed. I want you. I want us. You should have thought about that before you chose him. The next few hours were some of the most painful of my life. Rose cried, begged, Pleaded, promised everything under the sun if I'd just give her another chance. She swore she'd never speak to Felix again, that she'd quit her job if she had to, that she'd do anything to earn back my trust. But trust, once broken, isn't something you can just glue back together. And I'd learned something about myself over the past few weeks. I wasn't the kind of man who could live with wondering if his wife was telling the truth every time she left the house. I helped her load her suitcases into her car, and she cried the entire time. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe Belle will let you stay for real this time. Maybe Felix has room at his place." "I can't ask Felix," she said quickly. "I told you, I'm done with him." Right. She was done with him now that she'd been caught. How convenient. "That's your problem to figure out," I said. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, crying and staring up at our house, our former house, like she was memorizing it. Finally, she drove away. I went inside, poured myself a drink, and started the process of changing the locks. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer meetings, paperwork, and the strange process of untangling a life I'd built with someone else. Rose called constantly at first, texting, emailing, showing up at my work to try to talk to me. I blocked her number. Had security escort her out. Made it clear through my lawyer that all communication needed to go through official channels. She tried getting mutual friends involved, having them call me to tell me how sorry she was, how much she regretted everything, how she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Maybe she had. But that didn't make it my problem to fix. The funniest part? Felix apparently dropped her the second he realized she was actually getting divorced. Turns out, he was more interested in the thrill of the affair than in actually being with Rose. Who could have seen that coming? Belle called me about a month after Rose moved out. "She's staying with me now," she said. "Henry, she's a mess. She cries all the time, she's not eating, she's not sleeping." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I was. I didn't want Rose to suffer, even after everything. She knows she messed up. She knows she lost the best thing that ever happened to her. "Belle, I appreciate you calling, but just think about it, okay? People make mistakes. Even big ones. Some mistakes you don't get to come back from," I said. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Rose got half of our savings and some of the furniture. I got the house, my peace of mind, and the knowledge that I'd handled the situation with more grace than she deserved. A year after that, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and casual dinners. It took me a while to trust my judgment again, to believe that not everyone was hiding secrets behind their smiles. But eventually, I met Clara. A teacher, kind and funny and refreshingly honest about everything from her terrible cooking skills to her fear of horror movies. We took things slow, built something real based on actual trust instead of pretty lies. 2 years after my divorce was final, Clara and I got engaged. The proposal was nothing fancy, just dinner at home and a heartfelt conversation about the future we wanted to build together. But it felt more real, more solid, than anything I'd ever had with Rose. Rose, meanwhile, had moved across the country for a fresh start. According to Belle, she'd learned her lesson about cheating, but she was still single and struggling to trust herself in relationships. Sometimes I felt sorry for her. She'd traded a good marriage and a faithful husband for a few months of excitement with a man who dumped her the moment things got complicated. She'd given up everything stable and real for something that was never meant to last. But mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd found out when I did, before we'd had kids or bought a bigger house or gotten even more tangled up in each other's lives. Grateful that I'd handled it with dignity instead of letting anger make my decisions for me. And grateful for that moment in the kitchen, when Rose had demanded I apologize to Felix and I decided to let her dig her own grave instead of trying to save her from herself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't plotting some elaborate scheme to hurt the person who hurt you. Sometimes it's just letting them face the natural consequences of their choices while you build something better for yourself. Rose had wanted excitement, passion, the thrill of doing something forbidden. She'd gotten it, along with the guilt, the lies, the paranoia, and eventually the loneliness that came with throwing away something real for something that was never meant to last. Me? I'd wanted a partner I could trust, someone who'd choose me every day instead of looking for something better behind my back. And now I had that with Clara. We had movie nights where we actually watched the movies. Date nights where neither of us was checking our phones. Honest conversations about our problems instead of secret text messages with other people. It wasn't perfect, real love never is. But it was real, built on truth instead of lies, trust instead of suspicion. And every morning when I woke up next to Clara, I remembered that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Rose had made her choice. She'd chosen excitement over stability, lies over truth, Felix over me. And I'd chosen to let her have exactly what she'd chosen, while I built something better with someone who actually wanted to be there. In the end, we both got exactly what we deserved. But here's where the story gets really interesting, because life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. About 3 years after my divorce from Rose was finalized, I was living my best life with Clara. We'd just bought a house together, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Clara had this amazing garden in the backyard where she grew tomatoes that actually tasted like tomatoes, not like the cardboard ones you get at the store. I'd taken up woodworking in the garage, making furniture and little decorative pieces that Clara would strategically place around the house to make me feel accomplished. Life was good. Really good. The kind of good that makes you forget there was ever a time when you went to bed wondering if your partner was texting someone else. Then one Tuesday morning, while Clara was getting ready for work and I was making coffee, my phone rang. Unknown number, but something told me to answer it. Henry? The voice was shaky, uncertain. It's Belle. Rose's sister. I hadn't heard from her in over a year. Belle, I said, stepping out onto the back porch so Clara wouldn't overhear. Is everything okay? It's Rose, she said, and I could hear her crying. Henry, she's in the hospital. My stomach dropped. Despite everything that had happened between us, Rose had been a huge part of my life for years. You don't just stop caring about someone completely, even after they've broken your heart into a million pieces. What happened? Car accident. She's in pretty bad shape, Henry. They don't know if she's going to make it. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Where? St. Mary's Hospital, downtown. She's been asking for you. After everything she'd put me through, after the lies and the cheating and the betrayal, Rose was asking for me. How's that for a plot twist you never see coming? Belle, I don't think. Please, she interrupted. I know what she did to you. I know how much she hurt you. But Henry, she might not have much time, and she keeps saying your name. I looked through the window at Clara, who was humming while she picked out her earrings for the day. My beautiful, honest, loyal Clara who trusted me completely and deserved the same in return. I'll be there in an hour, I said. Clara took it better than I expected when I explained the situation. Of course you have to go, she said, straightening my collar in that way she did when she was worried but trying not to show it. She was a huge part of your life. Just be careful, okay? Don't let guilt make you do anything you'll regret. Smart woman, my Clara. She understood that sometimes you have to face your past to fully appreciate your present. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. Belle was waiting in the ICU family area, looking like she'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen her. She hugged me tight when I walked in, and I could feel her shaking. She's been in and out of consciousness, Belle whispered. The doctors say the next 24 hours are critical. What exactly happened? She was driving home from work during that storm last night. You know how bad the rain was? She hit a patch of standing water on Highway 9 and hydroplaned into a tree. Highway 9. That was nowhere near where Rose had been living the last I knew. What was she doing out there? Belle looked uncomfortable. She moved back to town about 6 months ago. Got a job at that marketing firm downtown. She's been trying to rebuild her life here. Back to town. 6 months ago. Right around the time Clara and I had gotten engaged, actually. Coincidence? In my experience, when it comes to ex-wives, there's no such thing as coincidence. Has she been asking about me? I had to know. Henry, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Rose has been keeping tabs on you. She knows about Clara, about your engagement. She's been hoping you might give her another chance someday. My blood ran cold. Belle, please tell me she hasn't been stalking you? No, nothing like that. But she drives by your old neighborhood sometimes. She saw the engagement announcement in the paper. She still loves you, Henry. Of course she did. Because that's how these things always work, isn't it? The person who cheats and lies and breaks your heart suddenly realizes what they've lost once you've moved on and found happiness somewhere else. A nurse approached us. Are you Henry Brooks? Yes. She's awake and asking for you. Room 314. But please, keep it brief. She's very weak. Walking down that hospital corridor felt like walking through a time machine. How many times had I imagined seeing Rose again? How many conversations had I played out in my head, all the things I'd say to her if I ever got the chance? But standing outside room 314, I realized I didn't want to say any of those things anymore. The anger had faded. The hurt had healed. What was left was just sadness. Sadness for what we'd lost, and for the choices that had led us both to this moment. Rose looked smaller in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines and monitors. Her face was bruised, her left arm in a cast, but her eyes were the same as they'd always been. The same eyes that had looked at me with love on our wedding day, and with guilt when I'd caught her cheating. "Henry," she whispered when she saw me. "You came." "Belle called me," I said, staying near the door. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," she said, attempting a weak smile. Though I guess it was more of a tree situation. Even hurt and vulnerable, she was still trying to make jokes. That was the Rose I'd fallen in love with, the one who could find humor in any situation. For a moment, I remembered why I'd married her. "The doctors say you're going to be okay," I said. "Are they right, though?" She looked at me with those eyes, and I knew she wasn't just talking about her physical injuries. "Am I going to be okay, Henry?" "Rose. I know I don't have the right to ask you this," she continued, her voice getting stronger. "I know I gave up that right when I chose Felix over you. But Henry, I need you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." Here it was. The conversation I'd both dreaded and anticipated for 3 years. I loved Felix, or I thought I did. But it wasn't real love, Henry. It was just excitement. The thrill of something new and forbidden. I was so stupid to think that was worth more than what we had. "Rose, you don't need to." "Yes, I do," she said, struggling to sit up slightly. "I need to tell you that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not just for the cheating, but for all of it. For making you feel crazy when you suspected something. For asking you to apologize to him. For putting you through months of lies and deception." I dreamed of hearing those words for so long. But now that she was saying them, they felt empty. Not because she didn't mean them, but because they were 3 years too late. "I accept your apology," I said simply. Hope flickered in her eyes. "Does that mean? Do you think there's any chance we could try again? I know about Clara, and I'm not asking you to leave her. But maybe when you're ready." And there it was. Even lying in a hospital bed, possibly facing her own mortality, Rose was still trying to find a way back into my life. Still believing that her apology could somehow undo years of betrayal and rebuild something that had been destroyed. "Rose, I'm getting married in 2 months." The hope in her eyes died like someone had blown out a candle. "Oh. Clara is. She's everything I didn't know I needed. She's honest and kind and she chooses me every single day. We're building something real together." Rose was crying now, silently, tears streaming down her bruised face. I know she's perfect for you in ways I never was. Belle told me about her, about how happy you are." "Then why did you move back here?" "Because I was hoping." She took a shaky breath. "I was hoping that maybe time would change things. That maybe you'd miss what we had, the good parts. I know it's selfish, but I couldn't stop hoping." It was selfish. But I understood it, in a way. Rose had traded everything stable and real for a few months of excitement, and when that excitement faded, she was left with nothing but regret and the memory of what she'd thrown away. "I did miss the good parts," I said honestly. "For a long time, I missed them terribly. But Rose, I don't miss wondering if you're telling me the truth. I don't miss checking your phone or worrying about where you are when you're late coming home. I don't miss feeling like I wasn't enough for you." "You were enough," she whispered. "You were more than enough. I was just too stupid to see it. Maybe. But it doesn't matter now." She nodded, closing her eyes. "I know. I needed you to know that I know. That I understand what I lost." We sat in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the beeping of machines and the distant chatter of nurses in the hallway. "Will you do me one favor?" Rose asked finally. "What?" "Will you be happy? Really, truly happy with Clara? Will you love her the way you loved me, but better? The way I should have let you love me?" The question hit me harder than I expected. "I already do." She smiled then, a real smile despite the tears. "Good. That's good." I stayed for another few minutes, but there wasn't much more to say. 3 years of separation, 3 years of healing and growth and building a new life, couldn't be undone by one hospital bed conversation. As I was leaving, Rose called my name one more time. "Henry? Thank you. For coming, for listening, for everything. I hope Clara knows how lucky she is." "She does," I said. "And so do I." I drove home in a daze, my head spinning with memories and emotions I thought I'd buried years ago. Clara was waiting on the front porch, still in her work clothes, worry written all over her face. "How is she?" Clara asked, pulling me into a hug before I'd even gotten out of the car. "She's going to be okay. Physically, anyway. And how are you?" I looked at this incredible woman who'd helped me rebuild my life, who trusted me enough to let me go see my ex-wife without question, who was asking about my well-being instead of demanding to know every detail of what Rose had said. "I'm okay too," I said, and realized I meant it. "Actually, I'm better than okay." That night, over dinner, I told Clara everything. About Rose's apology, about her confession that she'd moved back to town hoping for another chance, about the conversation that had finally closed a chapter of my life I didn't even realize was still open. "Are you having second thoughts?" Clara asked quietly. "About us, about getting married?" "What? No." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Clara, seeing Rose today just reminded me how grateful I am for what we have. She spent 3 years regretting her choices, hoping she could somehow undo them. But you can't undo the past. All you can do is make better choices going forward." "And what choice are you making?" "I'm choosing you. Every day, for the rest of my life, I'm choosing you." Clara smiled, but I could see she was still worried. "It's okay if you need time to process all this, Henry. Seeing your ex-wife in the hospital, hearing her apologize. That's a lot. You want to know what I was thinking about while I was driving home?" I said. "I was thinking about how Rose spent 3 years living with regret, and I've spent 3 years living with gratitude. She looks back at what she lost, and I look forward at what I've gained. We spent the rest of the evening planning our wedding, going over seating charts and menu options and all the mundane details that somehow felt magical when you were planning them with the right person. 2 weeks later, Belle called to tell me Rose had been discharged from the hospital and was doing well. She'd also apparently decided to take a job offer in Seattle, making a fresh start somewhere without the constant reminders of her mistakes. She said to tell you thank you, Belle said, for being kinder to her than she deserved. We all deserve kindness, Belle. Even when we've made terrible choices. You're a good man, Henry. Rose knows that now. I think that's why she's finally ready to let go and move on for real. Our wedding 2 months later was everything our first wedding hadn't been: intimate, honest, and filled with people who genuinely supported our relationship. No secrets, no lies, no wondering if the person standing next to me was thinking about someone else. During our vows, Clara promised to choose me every day, and I promised to do the same. But unlike my first wedding, these promises felt solid, built on a foundation of trust that had been tested and proven strong. The best man, my friend Oscar, gave a speech about second chances and how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing in disguise. He didn't know about Rose's hospital visit, only Clara and I knew about that, but his words felt perfectly timed. Henry learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to figure out what really matters, Oscar said, raising his glass. And what really matters is finding someone who chooses you, not just once, not just on the good days, but every single day, through all the ordinary moments and extraordinary challenges that make up a life together. As Clara and I danced our first dance as husband and wife, I thought about the conversation I'd had with Rose in that hospital room. She'd asked me to be happy, really truly happy, and to love Clara better than I'd loved her. Mission accomplished. 6 months after our wedding, Clara surprised me with news that she was pregnant. As we sat in the doctor's office, looking at the first ultrasound of our baby, I felt a kind of joy I'd never experienced before. This was what building a life with someone really meant, not just promising to love each other, but creating something new together, something that was bigger than either of us alone. Are you ready for this? Clara asked, squeezing my hand as we stared at the tiny blob on the screen that would become our child. With you? I'm ready for anything. The baby, a little girl we named Hope, was born on a Tuesday morning in spring, screaming her tiny lungs out and grabbing onto my finger like she was already determined to hold on to everything good in her life. As I held my daughter for the first time, with Clara exhausted but glowing beside me, I realized that this was what Rose had never understood about love. It's not about the excitement or the passion or the thrill of something new. It's about building something together, day by day, choice by choice, that becomes stronger and more beautiful over time. Rose had wanted fireworks. What she'd gotten was ashes. I'd chosen the slow burn of real love, and what I'd gotten was everything. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never caught Rose cheating. Would we have stayed married? Would we have been happy? Would I have ever known what real trust felt like? But then I look at Clara, watch her reading bedtime stories to Hope in that soft voice she reserves for our daughter, see her tending her garden or laughing at my terrible dad jokes, and I know that everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Rose's betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had freed me to find something better. And the best revenge really was living well, not just surviving her betrayal, but thriving in spite of it, building a life so much richer and fuller than anything we'd ever had together. The last I heard, Rose was doing well in Seattle. Belle said she'd started therapy, was working on herself, learning to be alone without being lonely. She'd even started dating someone new, apparently taking things slow and being completely honest about her past mistakes. I hope she finds happiness. I really do. Everyone deserves a second chance at love, even people who've made terrible choices. But her second chance isn't with me. Mine was with Clara, and I grabbed it with both hands and never let go. As I write this, Hope is 3 years old, running around our backyard chasing butterflies while Clara tends to her tomatoes. We're talking about having another baby, maybe expanding the house, definitely taking that family vacation to the beach this summer. It's an ordinary life in the best possible way. No drama, no secrets, no wondering if the person you love is telling you the truth. Just the quiet satisfaction of building something real with someone who chooses to be there. And you know what? That's worth more than all the excitement and passion in the world. In the end, Rose got what she chose: freedom from commitment, the thrill of the unknown, a fresh start in a new city. And I got what I chose: a partner who stays, a love that grows stronger instead of burning out, a family built on trust instead of lies. We both got exactly what we deserved.